And we're talking, and he goes, well, why don't you start her off at the beginning instead of starting her out completely OP? And I went, because I had all this backstory about
Yeah.
how she'd become the librarian and why she was the librarian. And he's like, well, that's really interesting. Why don't you go into it?
This is the CritRPG Podcast, your one-stop shop for everything Lit RPG, progression fantasy, and Royal Road. Hi, and welcome everyone to the CritRPG Podcast, the only podcast where we invite people from Australia only. And with me today is honorary Australian person and German person and British person and American person, Katie Hanna. You might know her as Arithion. She's the author of Library System Reset, right?
Mm-hmm.
Did I get that right? Okay, good.
Yes, you did.
I was scared for a second. How are you doing?
No, I am doing pretty bloody good this morning. I am on prednisone, and so I am like, hi.
So the CritRPG Podcast does not endorse drugs, despite what you might have heard in the bonus material that was recorded before the show. So no, we had to talk about books, and as
Yes.
we have learned from many children's ads in the 90s, books are the new drugs and way better anyway. So here we go.
Yes, they are.
So because I have more questions that haven't been answered yet about time dilation, so we need to talk about how library system reset came into being.
Okay, so been writing for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually got really burned out, like super burned out. Too many books. I had a contract that was for a book that I really enjoyed, but I was literally rewriting an old book, and so it was kind of annoying to redo, even though I love the story, but it had strict deadlines, and I was just pulling, like it was like pulling your nails out, like it was hard to do. And then I wanted to start writing another book, and I couldn't. I just could not bring myself to write. And in this time period, I started thinking about my library idea that had been, like floating around in my brain as it does, just germinating and stewing and just, becoming an idea. And I've always wanted to write about a magical library. Now, I've always wanted to write cozy, except I love violence. So cozy and cozy remains a dream of mine. But slice of life I can do, and I do it. I think I do it well because I have a lot of trouble not micromanaging the time in the books. So it becomes slice of life. The idea starts germinating, and I get this awesome idea about this all-powerful librarian, and I'm like, okay. I have this scene in my head of her going to retrieve a book and being slightly pissed off that it's got dog-eared pages and leveraging a fine. And I pitch it to one of my friends. Luke Chmilenko is a really good friend of mine. And he is like, hey, Katie, do you want to brainstorm it? Dude, this guy is the best brainstormer ever. And we're talking, and he goes, well, why don't you start her off at the beginning instead of starting her out completely OP? And I went, because I had all this backstory about how she'd become the librarian and why she was the librarian. And he's like, well, that's really interesting. Why don't you go into it? And I was like, oh. And so I spent 3 months, literally, because I write by hand, because I'm old and it stays in my brain better that way. I literally wrote out the actual, magic system. I wrote out magic system, right? And then I have more and pages and pages and
Do you want us to blur that? Yeah. Because people will freeze frame it. You know how it goes.
Oh. And well, it's actually just the library system being explained, which is we're up to chapter 36 now on Royal Road, so it's not really going to be too surprising. But yeah, so I wrote out how because I need my world in place before I can create in it. That's just how my brain works.
Mhm.
So I wrote out all this information, and then I'm like, oh my gosh, okay, I want a magical library that is about to die.
Mhm.
So the book starts with an isekai moment
Mhm.
where your main character gets pulled from Earth that is not a world that usually has magic
Mhm.
into the library because she is the only person still in existence after 500 years who has the magical signature that the library requires to connect to.
Cool. Mhm.
And that's how the isekai happens. And she ends up in a library that goes into emergency shutdown mode because it has no power. So she has to connect to the core and activate the library. So, and then she has to retrieve 18,000 books. So,
Oh yeah.
just a few.
Sure.
And it's a universal library. It exists in its
Mhm.
own dimensional pocket,
Mhm.
and it can be summoned to anywhere that somebody who has an affinity with magic wants it. So it
Mhm.
has multiple dimensional doorways. So when it's functioning, it's just accessible anywhere, anytime, and it's much bigger on the inside. I never mentioned the word TARDIS. It doesn't do time.
Mhm.
It doesn't travel through time, but it has
Mhm.
access to worlds where time runs differently. That's
Mhm.
where my time dilation problem comes
Okay.
into play.
Okay.
So what I did was, even though I made it have time dilation on one of the worlds they were sent to retrieve a very important book, because the
Mhm.
library couldn't be open yet because it didn't have enough power. It could only had the
Mhm.
power to like send them specific places to get this very specific books that it needed to power it back up to critical and not
Mhm.
emergency mode.
Mhm.
So she gets sent to this world, and I'm like, as I'm typing, oh yeah, let's just give it time dilation. So the time is passing quicker in the library, and she's on it. You've got to understand that she's on like a 72-hour time crunch to get these books. Okay.
Mhm. Okay. Mhm.
So which if you haven't read it is a bit of a spoiler for like chapter 16, 17, I think. But it's up there, so you can read it.
So basically, for the
Um,
first 5% of the book, because it's lit RPG. Okay, got it.
so she goes, and I'm really proud of this. I'm like, it's passing faster. It's about 3 times as fast or so. I think 20 minutes. Oh no, actually, it was like 6 times as fast. I can't remember. Somebody did the math in one of my comments, and they were like, so only like 60 years have passed on this world, and I'm like, shit, damn it. I'm
No.
like, I didn't think of that. So now I've got to go back and just redo that and make them have died
Mm.
only 10 years ago or some crap. But
Oh
since
yeah.
their time passes slower, I mean, it's still the time period, it's just a slower passing, you know?
Mhm.
But still, I was like, wait, it passes faster. Wait, oh, I'm really confused now. I'll have to go read the comments. Somebody did the math for
Yeah.
me. I'll figure it out.
Uh, I love these. I love these kind of comments. Like I hate them and I love them both. Where it's like, oh yeah, didn't your main character have this and this power like 15 pages, 15 chapters ago? I'm like, oh yeah, at that point where we talked about this, where we kind of like went off script because like it would be absolutely awesome to have like this 15 new powers that I'm never going to use again, and then you're like, oh god, I made a promise now and I have to keep it.
So,
Why?
so the library is, and the thing that I think some people
Mm-hmm.
don't realize, so they see that it's lit RPG,
Mm-hmm.
they see that it's progression fantasy,
Mm-hmm.
and they see that it's what else did I call it? I don't know. Give me a sec.
Don't worry about it.
I've got portal fantasy, isekai, progression. It is female lead, lit RPG, slice of life, adventure. So it's got all those in it, right? And I have like a warning, like the system is broken. Rebuilding it is a major focus. Like that
Yeah.
is what it is. It's
Yeah,
not,
I saw that. Yeah.
it isn't even functioning correctly. Like you can't access all its power, it can't access all its abilities, and it has a manifestation of the library that is
Mm-hmm.
like in a personal form. And he is like malfunctioning because he's part of the library that
Yeah.
has been defunct for 462 years. And like has just been trying to find somebody with the librarian signature, right?
Mm.
So that's all. Oh, and so that would be a huge spoiler. But anyway, the library has a function. There is a reason it is the magical library of everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And I had somebody comment like, oh, it doesn't live up to the library potential. And I'm like, what? And they're like, yeah, you should just be able to grab a book and sit in a corner and have them reading the book and not absorbing the books and not absorbing the knowledge and blah, blah, blah. Just like, and I'm like, it's a magical library. Why wouldn't you be able to just absorb the books?
I mean, in those instances, it's always, I personally feel, good point to ask, like, that sounds very, very good. If you want to write that,
cozy,
if you want to write that story, I would very much like to read that.
Yeah.
In this one, it doesn't, because
exactly
I don't like it as much as my own. Thank you.
Yeah, it's like it was actually a review, and they're like, this doesn't live up to the library hype or something like that. And I'm like, what? So I read the review, and I'm like, yeah, but that's the book. That's not my book. Yeah. The book you're writing about it not being is not my book. Like,
it could be worse. You could be writing mystery, and people complain that it's confusing, and they don't know what's going on. So.
Oh, I do also. I'm like a pepperer of information. I don't info dump.
Oh yeah.
And
I don't like it either.
I love mysteries, because you brought up mysteries, and so I always wanted to be a thriller writer, and then I kept having aliens and magic showing up in my books. So
it could be a science fiction magic thriller. Like we can do that.
So it kind of is. This is because you've got to find out who wanted the library to not be functioning in the first place. Because to not be able to find a signature in like galaxies in the whole universe, with so many worlds and planets and systems and everything, which is so much fun to create species, by the way. It's just a ball. Yeah, you've got to think that somebody did something, there's a reason. So like that is a mystery behind everything. But it's like, it's not a cozy library mystery. It's nowhere did I mention cozy, even though I would have loved it to be cozy.
You mentioned cozy before, okay.
Well, that's what started it, and then I realized I can't write cozy.
Oh no! Oh no! Oh no! I have a story for that for the bones, but sorry, I have a story for that for the bones material for sure.
I have like she like machetes like these engorged bookworms in like half, and actual worms, not people.
Yeah.
And she that's like in chapter 6 or 7. And I'm like, yeah, it's not cozy. It's not happening. Cozy is not happening. This is just not happening. So but yeah, it's not that book. And I have a lot of people who want their information now. I'm like, well, that's not how it works, because she doesn't know the information. The library is glitching. Nobody knows the information. Like,
and I mean, I can get it. People like those people usually, in my experience at least, I haven't met all people in the world, of course.
Yeah.
But those people generally want to be able to kind of predict the trajectory of the story and then see if they're right or not. And they don't like it if they get confronted with new facts every once in a while. Whereas others kind of enjoy that kind of feeling of tension of like, hey, what's going on here? Right? It's like finding out, being nosy.
Well, I love gathering the breadcrumbs and seeing if I've got the right path. You know? Or and 9 times out of 10, I will get the right path. Yeah. But I'm like it's an ADHD thing, I think. Yeah, when you read when you watch something and the first 5 minutes you're like, oh, I know how this ends.
It's especially like I think it's a writer thing more than anything. You know how stories go, and you're like, yep, this character, that character, yep.
My husband hates watching movies with me.
Oh yeah.
I'm like, oh, blah blah blah. He's like, will you stop that?
And I impressed a girl once with that when I was like way younger, like 21 or something. And I was like, oh yeah. So I watched Good Will Hunting with her, and it was like 10 minutes. And I was like, oh cool. So this character is going to do this with that character, and then it's going to end like this. It's like, no.
And it did.
No, how can you tell this? Like, I don't know. But that was a question. Oh right, yeah. I almost had it. God damn it. No, it's gonna be fine. It's gonna be fine.
It's okay. I've lost it too.
All right, we can go. I don't quite remember what we were talking about before, unfortunately.
Me either. This is two ADHD people doing a podcast.
It's a lot of stuff. Usually I am way better at handling this, but today it's one of those days.
It's a Friday, right? Yeah. It's end of the week. Your brain's like overloaded. Yes, that's our excuse, and we're sticking to it. We were talking about books at some stage.
We were talking about the bookworms and that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah. So the library is yes. I can't do cozy. I've tried and failed multiple times.
I think that's okay though, right?
Yeah.
So you do whatever you can do best.
Yeah. Well, and so I started writing Library System Reset, and it's Library System Reset Overdue, because I was like, hey, we'll make the first book Overdue. Well, let's just say the Overdue is not really ever going to stop. So it's kind of just Library System Reset is the series name anyway. Yeah. So, and I started writing it because I wanted a magical librarian who could get OP. Eventually, and in the process of powering up this library to be this amazing magical construct that does basically good for the universe. And not everybody likes there to be good in the universe, so that's where your bad guys come in, because they want the power just for themselves. They don't want it to be shared. They're greedy, mothers.
So they just want to, take all the power and book it.
Yes. That was really bad. But I'm going to use that as a dad joke.
Please do go on. Like you can ask me anytime. I'm available to book.
I'll give it to my grandfatherly figure, and because he's been making dad jokes throughout the whole book. He's an elf though, and he walks in at the end of chapter 13 when the library gets some of its power back, and he has one of the important books, so the book gets a pulse, and he walks in and he's like, it's about time. I have been trying to return this book for almost 500 years. Where have you been? I better not get fined. And that's like the end of the chapter.
Nice.
He's the best character. I love him. He's a high elf, and he's just hilarious. He's just in his own grandfatherly way. He's like, like millennia old, and he's just like. I think. Sorry.
One thing that your book keeps reminding me of certain video games. First and foremost, Bastion, because it's also.
Oh gosh, that's old.
Thank you, Katie. Thank you very much.
I met my husband playing EverQuest 2. I can't talk.
No, it's just fine. Like just casually, like telling me I'm old. It's nice.
I bet I'm older than you.
How old are you?
I'm old. I'm not saying that. You cut it out, right?
No, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm older than I look. Actually, people think like, oh yeah, Max, you like, I bet you like 25 or 26. I'm like,
yeah, no, I'm a lot older.
Oh, child. I was old when this world was still young. And
you sweet summer child, that's how you feel, right? Yeah.
Exactly. And so no, like Bastion, for example, or like there were some other games that kind of remind me of the premise. I mean, the premise is great, right? It's very cool, and it's good for a reason. People have thought about it before, but not in this library twist, I think. So which is why I like it.
It's just that like I wrote this for me because I needed something that I was excited about, and I hadn't been able to get excited about ideas.
Okay. So why don't we then go into the next part, and that would be what's the best writing advice you've ever gotten?
Okay, I'm going to start that off. The worst writing advice I ever got. Okay, so back years and years ago in like 2004. I know, right? I met an online, like back when forums were all the rage and we didn't have headsets and shit. And
what do you mean?
Ventrilo was only just coming out and TeamSpeak 3 was a thing.
What's Skype?
I was part of a forum. I found a forum online, a writing forum, and it was just a group of maybe 10 of us. And one of the girls there was so like pursuing trad publishing. And she was like, you must write every day. You have to write every day. So I would force myself to write every day. I'd hate writing every day, but I did it. And I produced some awesome crap. And I wrote every day and I wrote every day. And then I went to DragonCon in 2008, where I went to several writing track panels. And one of the most important pieces of advice I got there was every writer is different. There is no one way that a writer can create. You need to do what works for you.
Yeah.
So I brought that back to the writing group and I was like, dude, you don't have to write every day. You have to do how it works for you. And that other friend was like, no, dude, fuck off. Sorry, I do swear. I hope that
doesn't matter. Like,
dude, I've been very, very good because I swear a lot more than this usually.
This is a European podcast. I don't really give a shit.
Yes. So I was basically like, no, fuck off, mate. Like, I can write how works best for me.
Yeah.
And I discovered that I am a binge everythinger. I binge watch shows. I binge read books. I will take 2 weeks and read like 30 books. I binge write. So when I write, I get in the zone and I hyper focus and I write. And that is what works for me. So it took me like 4 years to figure out that. And once I had figured out that, writing came a lot easier and it was a lot more fun. So the best piece of writing advice I have ever gotten and I will ever give is that you need to do you. You have to find your own process. Now, people like, I have some template sheets that sometimes help me sort shit out in my head. I will gladly offer them to other people, but they might not work for them. So I'm always like, hey, you can use these templates that will help you like ask questions that make you start thinking, but it might not work for you. It works for me. And so every piece of writing advice I give is always tempered by, this is how I do it. Your brain might work differently. So I find that is very important, that people understand that everyone is different and thus everybody's process is different. So yeah, and not everybody's going to write stream of consciousness like I do. So the dictation method I use isn't going to work for everybody else because a lot of people can't do that. Whereas obviously I have verbal diarrhea sometimes and I can just talk and not stop, which helps when you want to dictate stream of consciousness.
Small throw in here. I mean, you can just talk for hours, right? You aren't like, for example, Honoré who has to pause every 15 minutes or her throat gets scratchy.
Oh gosh, no, and I wouldn't even care if my throat got scratchy. I love Honoré; she's so lovely.
She's amazing. But yeah, we exchange memes every once in a while, and she wrote that with like the crying girl meme where it's like, I have to stop dictating every 15 minutes, or my throat gets scratchy. So
no, yeah. I do. I literally will go and do like I'll do like 7 to 8 minute sections, which gets me about 800 words, 700 to 800 words, and I'll do that 3 times and my chapter's done. And then I'll break and then I'll do another chapter, and so I can generally dictate about 2 chapters a day if I'm on my game, and edit 2 chapters a day. Except I try to only do chapters Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. I leave myself a lazy day in the middle, and I take my weekends off for my family because I have to. I have to spend family time. My kid's 11 years old now, so, you know, gotta watch her grow up. So she's awesome.
I have to do this because I find a good schedule, because like I told you this morning, I just today I wrote, I edited, it was great, and then I kind of lost track again. I think one of my biggest issues is that I can't really write at home. I need to be somewhere else. So I'm looking forward to having a job again. I really hope that I do get a new job soon, because then I can go into one of their like sound isolation booths after work, and just kind of say like, okay, it's 6 o'clock now. I have like 2 hours, so it's dictate, and then when I get home, I can fix it up.
Yeah, I have my house has its. Do I edit?
I want to hear what you want to say first, and then I want to ask you if you edit first or write first on a day.
So we built this house 4 years ago, and my office has floor to ceiling bookcases that frame the window that looks out to the little lake lot that we got. And so I have my place to come and do my work, and my door closes, which my cat has not scratched at yet. So that is actually a win today. But yeah, so I come in, I sit. Usually if my husband and daughter are gone, I have all of the dogs in with me. One sits on my feet, one sits in her little bed, the other one flops next to the door, and I have 2 cat scratching posts, like with the seats on the top, and I have one in front of the window. And when it's a sunny day, the cats will stretch in front of the window. So I always have my animals around me, and I have my wombat.
Oh, nice. I have one question though. How do you struggle writing cozy?
Because I like violence, and I want them all, and I always end up with bad guys who need killing.
Calm down there, Marshall Mathers. Anyway,
so I have a really nice environment to write in. And actually on the other side of this desk, I have a treadmill desk, so I'll take my laptop and walk while I write.
Yeah, I have that too. This desk goes up, and I just like take the treadmill and put it underneath. Yeah. It's awesome.
It really is. I don't walk fast, but I can walk at like 2 miles an hour and type. So
3.5 kilometers per hour for at least 2 hours. So every time I write, I get
nice.
I lose calories like no one's business.
That's awesome,
right? But main question: do you edit first or do you write first?
Okay, so I have been editing the previous day's 2 chapters, which then leads me into a good point to go into the next chapters.
Yep.
However, I am contemplating switching it to writing the chapters, editing the chapters, and sketching down what comes next, and then going the next day, so I'm fresh. Or writing a chapter, editing it, writing a chapter, editing it. Because sometimes I feel when I go back the next day, maybe I've lost a little bit from the dictation, and so my brain isn't quite where I need it to be. So I'm still fine tuning that, but I generally I've been writing at least 5 to 6 chapters a week. I was ahead a few chapters, and then I got sick at the beginning of this week, and so
How long are your chapters?
2.5-ish. I'd say probably about 2,700 on average, but I get in between 2,200 and 3,000 generally is my chapter length. I don't seem to be able to restrict it from that. I don't seem to be able to load enough into my chapters, and I don't like cutting chapters in awkward places. I want them to have a definitive end that leads on.
Cliffhanger, you mean?
Some of them I do cliffhanger, but
no, it's fine. It's fine. I was just like, excited.
Some of them I do cliffhanger, but generally I like to move it. Like I like to have something hanging there that is more of an invite to the next chapter.
Yep.
I mean, some people might see it as a slight cliffhanger, but for me, I just want anticipation of the next chapter. I'm trying to get it to a point where every like 4 chapters or so, I'll have like a really good break point. But that just depends.
So I loved the Hemingway memoir. There's some
I have not read it.
There's some really good tidbits in it, and one of them is that he tried, or he suggests to try to always stop at a point where it's good.
Yeah.
Because then at the next day you feel fresh and excited and want to go back to it.
Going onto a thread.
Exactly.
Like taking a thread, being happy with where it's going to go the next day.
Yeah. So he suggests doing that, and I totally agree with it, because I think that, it just kind of makes sense. And to me, that translates to cliffhangers.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Because so when I end a chapter on a tense note, it's easier for me next to go like, oh, cool, I want to write more.
Yeah. Well, like for one of just an ending line, keep those thoughts to yourself, Quinn. Quinn did. She locked them down as tightly as she could and thought, I will for now. So that's the ending of a chapter, but it's got that little bit of a like tension sitting there, like, oh, I'll do that for now, like, as I'm not going to do this forever type thing, one of my I hope I can call him friend, and he won't stone me for it. Seth McDuffie. He was on a podcast, and then afterwards we started chatting, and now we're kind of friends. And he said that he's a musician, so he writes very musically. And now when you just said hey, when you read those words, I was like, okay, I can see that. And I see it as in the movie, because I've worked in movies for a while, right? Framing shots and all that kind of stuff, and editing is part of what I liked about it. And when those last lines have that kind of string orchestra in the background, that's when you have a good end line, I think. Yeah. So I try to do have a little bit of tension, to bring the scene to a close, but have a tension there that is oh, well, I want to read what happens next. Because cliffhangers get you 0.5 stars. But you need them. And they're an amazing tool. And frankly, they keep the tension in your novel from bottoming out.
You cannot write a tension without writing tension. It's impossible.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? So, I mean, what do you think? Why do because people love cliffhangers, but they like to complain about them too. Why do you think that is?
I think, in my amazing wisdom, I think it's a lot about instant gratification.
Okay.
People don't like cliffhangers because it means they don't get their resolution now. And that pisses people off. They want in
a web serial, that makes sense.
Yeah. And some of my comments, oh my God, I don't like that you're just, piecing out the information. Well, dude, read the fucking book.
It's fair to say he doesn't like it. That's okay.
That's fine.
And you can do with that information as you want. But if you don't,
I'm not going to change my writing style because you don't like the fact that I don't just info dump everything now.
And so. I don't think necessarily people want that. It always helps me to think of these people as being reading that as very begging, and they're saying hey, I don't feel good right now and I want to feel better, and that actually makes it easier to give them what they want without twisting stuff into a pretzel.
For a lot of people, I also feel like it's more of a vocal minority who want this and they want it now and they didn't get it, and you made them angry because they didn't get it now. Or they were having a bad day and they came to your story and they wanted something specific and your story wasn't exactly what they wanted, and so you're the evil person. And you have to really, after having thousands of Amazon reviews, I find when I first wrote Somnia back in 2018 and put it up on Roll Road, I found some of the comments super hard to deal with because I wasn't used to. I mean, I had a few hundred comments on my other books. This is back before you could just rate a book. You had to leave a review. And so getting 50 reviews was an amazing thing, And so like I had reviews and some of them got to me, but Raw Road really got to me. I got a lot of good feedback, but I also got a lot of, because it used to be super bad. But now with so many books under my belt and so many reviews, and occasionally taking those reviews and using the bad ones as advertisements for other things, like read this book because I think I've grown a lot thicker skin. And so I just, people who want to leave crappy comments, I just ignore them. But about 95% of my comments, and I've had a lot of them so far, have been super great. Really constructive if they're critical, and stuff where I'm like, oh yeah, time dilation, I'm gonna have to redo that. So they're, it's one of those things where you have to, I think, take into consideration like just the atmosphere of the community, and you just have to take those comments with a grain of salt. And just be like, okay, this is this person's opinion, and that's okay. They're entitled to their opinion.
Like a dude,
and if they want that book, then they can go and write it. So
exactly. So
not my circus, not my monkey.
Exactly. So like I said, besides the whole having pity on these people kind of thing, which always sounds a bit arrogant, but I don't mean it in this way. It just really helps to think of them as like, hey, I'm
sorry
I feel bad.
You didn't get your book.
Yeah,
go. I hope you find it or write it.
What do you want? Like, what do you want? And maybe I can show you where to find it. Like, if you want like instant gratification with lots of information dumps and all that kind of stuff, there are books like that out there. Have you read all like these books? Maybe you like those, right? Yeah. And I have had very good conversations with people who wrote very interesting things in my comments. I don't mean like I don't check the comments on my first 10 chapters because I use those to filter out people who don't like my book.
Yeah.
Good. Like, you don't like it? Okay, good. Like, thanks. Sometimes though, I get a new comment and I go back and I read another one. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. But it's definitely strength training.
It is.
These comments.
Well, and it's just, I think by the time you're a certain amount of books in, you're just like, there are billions of books out there. Not everybody is going to like every book, and that's just how life is. Yeah. Although, like, I did have one review that really bugged me because it was a 0.5 review, and they jumped to chapter 3 to star it.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But in the review, they say I didn't read past chapter 1, and I'm like, because 0.5 stars on chapter 1 can be removed.
Yeah.
But they jumped to chapter 3 to 0.5 star it. But then in the review, it's like, I didn't read past chapter 1. I hated this book, basically. And I'm like,
well,
little shit.
Well, I mean, you can still talk to John about that. Like, John reads those things, right? So
yeah, I tried, but it's still there. Whatever, don't care.
Yeah,
but
I mean, recently one person who wrote a like kind of critical comment on with a very because they wrote a review that was like, okay, cool, like this person can do better, they didn't like this, didn't like that, and so this was a bit confusing, blah blah blah. We talked about this. 0.5 stars. Like, this doesn't track because you didn't say like this is the worst shit on the planet, and this is not a downvote button, dude. This is like, I know, but so this just vanished, and the guy no longer has an account, so I don't know what happened. But
he might have done that to a few of them.
Yeah, he might have, like, maybe he did that. No, I didn't do anything about it.
He was having a bad day and then went, I'm not going to do that, and deleted his account.
Yeah, no. Sorry.
I had I've had a few really weird 4 stars that are like 4 stars and like trash my characters, but I still got a 4 star. I'm like, okay, whatever.
I just think that kind of works.
You don't have to like my characters. That's fine.
I mean,
but I love the world, and I'm like, okay, that's cool.
4 stars is basically a downvote, right?
Yeah, I know, right?
Because like
it is the way the system rates it is. Yeah. I
mean,
but hey, it's better than them giving me a 2 star though. So
exactly.
Like, okay.
So in my personal opinion, it is 5 stars. I liked it. 4.5 stars was okay, still a good book. 4 stars is like, not for me. And anything below that is just like the ability to hammer on the dislike button more than once. I talked about this with Hanna. I talked about this with Saki Myth. We all have our different opinions. And I mean, it's Hanna's website. He runs it. I get his points, and they're good points. And I just personally feel as though we should be thinking about what do we want to encourage. Because right now, the system is designed to... So I do think the rating system is okay. And it right now it is tailored towards people who have a lot of followers, because it evens out. I personally believe a page like Royal Road that is there to give exposure to, like, in my personal idea at least, is there to give exposure to smaller authors more than any other website, should have a system that is designed to do exactly that, and not a system that rewards people with thousands of followers who can upvote for you. Same thing with Rising Stars, for example. If you release a new book, if Raven's Dagger releases a new book, if Void Heralds, Selkie, anyone releases a new book, you will not get on top 1. Period. Period. Ever.
Well, I mean, I got onto the front page. To be honest, though, I didn't expect this book to do well at all.
Also,
it is slow burn, which is already outside of most lit RPG purview, because they all want OP now, immediately. My system is broken, so the system isn't immediately there. I don't have immediate system messages with all the stats and with all the info. And it's just, it's a slice of life, so it's a lot slower. She progresses fast, but not as fast as people want, because it's a slow burn, for all the reasons above. And so I was just writing about a magical library, and I was like, I'll be happy with a few hundred followers. Sure, would I like more? And then I got on Rising Stars, and I got on the front page, like number 6 or 7, but I couldn't really move past that. And it's really weird, because now they've reconfigured how it works, and views count a lot more than followers.
Yes.
Like a lot more. And if you have less chapters, that puts you at a great disadvantage. And
I think Hanna weighted so that if you have longer chapters, the views count more, though. He did account for that.
Mine definitely didn't. Like, I would be, because I'm very analytical, and I tracked numbers and everything for probably like 2 weeks. And I would be constantly getting way more followers than like 3 of them that stayed above me the whole time. But I would be getting like 1 or 2 less K views a day. And I just stayed down the bottom, and which is fine. I wasn't even expecting to make it onto Rising Stars, let alone the front page. But I was like, okay, now I know next time what to do if I do it again, but
so, yes. That being said, what was also cool. All right, so yeah, the thing that ads to your first page are allowed. I get it. It's also good, but at this point, if it's not happening yet, so maybe I'm just blowing out of proportion. But when I got my Rising Stars run, and I mean, writing is psychological, introspective, female protagonist, science, fantasy, mystery thriller, is not a recipe for success in Royal Road, but it still got 1,000 followers, and I hit Rising Stars pay number 6 or so. So no, wait, 9. Right, I'm super happy with it. It's actually in the small thumbnail for the iTunes store.
Oh, nice!
Yes.
That's awesome.
But so this podcast is not about me; it's about you. But so yeah, I think
I was happy. Well, I mean, I'm still on Rising Stars right now.
Yeah.
I'm just slowly moving down. But dude, Beware of Chicken alternate universe released like a couple of days after. I didn't
Yeah,
stand a chance, like that was not going to
exactly.
happen.
But I mean, kind of, the wise words of Travis Deverell come to mind. If you're fighting for spot 1 on the best-selling list with Will Smith, you no longer have the right to have imposter syndrome.
I know.
So,
but I was extremely happy because like I said, I didn't expect. Everybody's like, oh yeah, see if you can. I'm like, dude, I'm just going to release my chapters 1 a day for like 3 weeks, and then I've been doing about 5 a week. Even though my timetable says 4 a week, but I've just been really excited to share, so I've been sharing 5 a week.
Yeah.
I'll go down to my timetable eventually, but
okay, sorry, because I definitely want to throw something in here, and that is, so you write for a living, right?
Yes, I do.
So, and you're still putting it out there on Railroad, even though it's not a success, which is very important to me on this podcast because A, it gives me hope, and B, like it tells other, like, hopefully if you're a listener, you can listen to this and you're like, yeah, Railroad is not the be all and all.
No, it's not. And this book has done fairly well. I'm closing in on 2,500 followers, and it's only been out for 6 weeks, so it's not like that's a bad count. I've still got a couple of weeks probably fallen down the rising stars, but that still gives you that extra little boost, and I did this for me. I did this to get myself out of burnout and back into the love of writing and having people wanting a chapter. And because I do Patreon as well, so I have 10 chapters in advance there. Knowing that I need to get that out there because I have patrons literally paying me for that. That helps me write. And it helps me know that there are people who want to read what I'm writing.
It stresses me the fuck out.
Oh, does it?
Yeah,
it makes me excited to get them the next chapter.
Because I love that. The Torchbearer Patreon was not a success at all. Mostly because I priced it at $10 for a month of advanced chapters, and I personally think that's actually a good thing it didn't work out, because the moment I realized, like, hey, this Patreon is not going to do it, I felt so much relief. Because now I could just write for myself.
Yeah.
I could write what I wanted, and I didn't owe anything to anyone. So that was very, very good.
Okay, see, I get that. That's an awesome feeling. But for me, with my current level of with the current burnout I had, being able to share my love of the story, that is a super driving point for me. And my Patreon isn't like the be all and end all, but it's bringing in enough to pay for a couple of my kids' lessons.
Nice.
Like it pays for her singing and her piano. So yay, it pays for a couple of things. And I'm not trying to build it up to be something amazing. It's just like a little bit of extra cash. For doing something I love. And that's what I did it for.
A German friend of mine calls it Kuchengeld.
Yeah, no?
Right? So cake money.
Kaffeeklatschgeld.
One of those untranslatables. Like, how do you like? It's not coffee slap. I know that.
Kaffeeklatsch is like coffee, cake, and gossip time.
Yeah.
Would you say that's about right?
Yeah, and they're telling us that Germans have long terms. Like, yeah.
I know, right? Dude, it's so funny, though, because I always remember the Aufenthaltsgenehmigung because it's like a 4-letter word in, like, English. But Aufenthaltsgenehmigung says exactly what it is.
Yeah. All those German words do.
You're staying, your permission to stay.
Yeah. Mietschuldenfreiheitsbescheinigung. It does exactly what's on a tin.
It does. It always does.
You start at the end, and it tells you, Bescheinigung, that you are free of Freiheits, Mietschulden, so rent debt. That's what it does.
And it's this awesome, like, I love the German language. And it's so weird because even after 17 years of not being in the country, or 18 years,
Hmm.
I still will be speaking and be like, oh, what's the English word for that?
Oh
Like,
yeah.
and the best one is, what is it? When you're feeling comfortable, when you're feeling comfortable, what is it?
Depends. Gemütlich.
Yes, gemütlich doesn't translate. It's
Yeah.
not. It's a
not cozy.
sensation. Yeah,
It's not
but
cozy.
It's more.
It's more than that.
Gemütlich is more than just cozy. It's more than just comfortable. It's like this whole sensation,
Yeah.
and you don't get that in the translation. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
Which is just
annoying. It's the relaxation you feel in a cozy space.
Yes.
Which is
a whole phrase, you know, like, and there's so many words like that you're like,
and,
oh.
Yeah, it's more than that even, right? It is the feeling
of security.
A sense of peace. Sense of peace.
Security, wohlfühlen. You just feel this.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's just,
Welcome
German semantics.
Welcome to the CritRPG Podcast, everyone, where we talk about, everything. So, going back on track, what would be one thing that you would change in previous works or in your previous work?
I have gotten much, much, much better at world building. My strength was always my characters, which is why anybody criticizing my characters really pisses me off.
Sorry, you mumbled and you misspoke. Doesn't know what they're talking about.
Yes, thank you. So like characterization was always my big thing. Plot, because I put lots of little threads and lots of little twists in my plots, always been my strength. But world building, my descriptions, my ability to pull somebody into the world, I always felt that very heavily relied on my characterization and the plot more than the world building. And just as I've grown older in writing, I guess, I feel like I've gotten much better at giving full, like, sensory descriptions where you have to be really careful that you don't purple prose it, because you don't want to purple prose it. But
excuse me?
You can purple prose, like
no,
flowery, right?
I know you definitely do want to do that. I don't know what you're talking about.
But you can create such amazing like images in people's minds, and I've always wanted to be able to create movies for people so they can see them in their head. And I think I've just gotten a lot better at that over time. So I would probably like to go back to especially my first 3 books and up the dystopian feel of the world and just give it more grit and give it more of a visceral feel to it. I have definitely gotten better at that. I had somebody criticize that in a comment. I think I blocked them. I was like, you don't want to know what the library looks like? Or how could you not want to know what a magical library looks like? Like, what the hell?
Also, you can skip.
Yeah. Skim the freaking text.
Skim the text. For me, like, all those details are very, very hard to write because I skim them. Right? I go like, dusty, books, dark, wood. Okay, good. I got it. Right. But then when I slow down, so for example, which is why I like the Patrick Rothfuss, for example, or Max Gladstone, because it really forces me to slow down.
I like Max Gladstone. Yeah.
What's this? Another ad? Yeah, because I'm not Zogarth and I really need money. Joke aside, if you're enjoying this podcast, check out Patreon. Like, subscribe, you know the drill. Speaking of Patreon, by the way, there is at least half an hour of content for every hour of podcast you're listening to. For Raven's Dagger, for example, we have 2 hours of bonus content that you can enjoy. All right, I'll see you there and enjoy the show. Speaking of making books shine, what's the best book you ever read and why is it awesome?
Okay, so my favorite book that has stuck with me for 30 years is called, it's a favorite series. It's by Louise Cooper. It's called the Time Master Trilogy. And it is 3 books long: The Initiate, The Outcast, and The Master. And it is a book about chaos and order. And in the end, you don't know whether the good or the bad guys have won. And the whole theme centers around, is good really good when it does bad things? And is evil always evil if it uses some good methods to reach its ends? So it leaves you with this gray area that is just like spine tingling. And I have just always loved those books. Especially as you follow the main character as he goes through, and you think one thing and then realize another thing and then realize another thing, and it just all comes together so well. And I am not a big rereader of books. I have a really good memory for that sort of for that sort of stuff. And so I tend to not reread books. It's not like the comfort of rewatching a TV show over and over like I do, because that kind of plays in the background then, you know, like a comfort thing. But books, I don't reread. These books, I have probably reread about 12 times.
Nice.
Which is, for me, because I just love them. And
saying, so you missed a pun there. You read them time and time again.
Yes. The Time Master Trilogy. Okay. I'm gonna take it time and time again.
I'm very sorry for inflicting emotional damage, but
it's okay. It's all good. Dude, I need all the dad jokes I can get.
Yeah. Unfortunately, by now I'm fully booked.
Has to be able to dad joke.
I'm a fond of dad jokes, but unfortunately, by now awesome. I'm fully booked.
So I can't book it then.
No, you can't book it. No, sorry. I mean.
Oh, that's classic.
I mean, I would say otherwise, but that would turn me into a librarian. We should probably return to the podcast.
Okay.
I'm just gonna hand it back to you.
Okay, so Louise Cooper, Time Master Trilogy. That is my favorite series ever written, that I've ever read. And don't get me wrong, I love a lot of books, but these ones have stayed with me since I was like 12. So I love them.
I love those kind of books.
Yeah.
They're nice.
Life-defining books. So.
Exactly. For me, that was the Neshan trilogy by Isao. That, however, brings us to the bookend of this podcast. I can't stop. Please help. And that is Shoutouts.
Okay, so I love a lot of the books that are currently very popular. Like, I love All the Skills.
Oh, yeah.
I am in love with Mark of the Fool. It is literally my favorite thing out there right now. I don't know why. I just freaking loved it. Battle Mage Farmer. Adore it. Seth is one of the best dudes ever. I love shirts, but who doesn't?
There are lots of people who don't. They will be very, very loud about it, but they don't really matter because
they're very vocal about it, aren't they?
Yeah, because I think they're so vocal about it because they kind of hate themselves for the fact that they still like it, and I'm still gonna read the next part.
But there are some older books actually that I really loved and that don't get enough love anymore, like War Eternus by Charles Dean. One of my favorite series ever. I absolutely adore it. Jeff Hayes does it with Sound Booth Theater. Fantastic series, War Eternus. I think he finished that in 2020. So it's an old series, like 5 books, I think. So I love anything Charles writes, but War Eternus, definitely my favorite. I love all of Michael Chatfield's stuff. I think it's fantastic. I'm trying to think. I'd written down War Eternus. So love Michael Chatfield stuff, Emerillia, and
it's good.
Realms.
The fewer books you recommend, the fewer links I will have to create for the podcast.
Oh, okay. So we'll leave it at that. But yeah, I love a lot of the books, and I think that, you know, if you're reading a lot of the newer stuff, you should try and go back and have a look at a lot of the older stuff, because back when the genre was a wee thing, there were still some really good books out there. So
I mean, like, there was this time where everyone talked about Cradle, which is right. It's one of the founding fathers of it.
Yep.
So very much.
There was The Land, and you've
Mm-hmm.
got not personally one of my favorites. I couldn't get into it much, but my husband loved it. So many people I know loved it, and so it's like a benchmark. And Awaken Online and Ascend Online, you know.
You can definitely say
Somnia Online.
It landed well with some people.
You can't help it.
No, it's brain damage.
Yeah.
My shout out would be for a friend of mine who wants to remain very anonymous. His book is called Marsh Knight, and it's on Railroad right now. Yeah, that one.
It is.
And it's on Railroad right now.
It's coming up on Rising Stars, and it is currently number 21.
Exactly. Let's just hope it doesn't get bogged down. You're very easy to get with these. You know that? That's amazing. I really like it.
Oh, I like puns. Puns are one of my favorite things. So.
Well, in German they call me the punzer.
Oh God.
Well, this was it for the main part of the torture. I mean, the podcast. So thank you so much for listening and enduring the puns. If you want the rest of the podcast, it is right down below on my Patreon. We used to call it bonus material, but I think it's kind of disingenuous because it literally is the other half of the podcast. So yeah, we're going to keep talking about more stuff that doesn't really have to do anything with books. We're going to be a bit more candid. We're going to, start talking shit about people. No, we're not. We're never that. But we will talk about
talking shit about people. I like people too much.
Exactly. Me too. And yeah, we're going to talk about more stuff that doesn't relate to the 4 main questions. And if you liked all the asides that we had in this episode, then you will like the stuff on Patreon, because it's basically more of that. Just us chatting. Oh, and by the way, there's 3 hours of Shirtaloon on there. There's 2 hours of Raven's Dagger. There is lots of...
I love Raven's Dagger's book too.
Right?
Books too.
So good. He's writing a new one.
I should have shouted out to Nix.
Which one?
Nix has awesome... Nixia has awesome books too.
There's so many of them.
Bullshit. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I love the fact that it's called...
Awesome.
This trilogy is broken and it's 4 books.
I know.
It's gloriously dumb, but it's good.
I know. Oh, and then there's Alex Raceman and Dinosaur Dungeon. Yeah.
If you want more of that bonus material, thank you so much for watching.
Yes.
And I'll see you next time. And if you're on Patreon, well, then hi, the show goes on.